Welcome to the Educator's Corner podcast, the show where we stay curious for a little bit longer. I'm Kai Basher, and in each episode, I'm joined by innovators from around the world as we explore the challenges, opportunities, and ideas shaping our schools and our communities. And if you'd like more insights and stories, subscribe to Kai Pod News, where I share reflections to keep the conversation going. You'll find the link to sign up in the show notes. Today's episode focuses on a vital topic for every school community: mental health and well-being. We'll be exploring how mental health first aid training can empower educators and school staff to support each other and their students more effectively. Joining us is George Peterkin, a qualified teacher, accredited therapeutic counsellor, and founder of Mind Your Health Limited. George specialises in mental health training for schools and organisations worldwide and is currently delivering mental health first aid training for staff at British School Muscat as part of our Start of Year Inset programme. Together, we're going to be discussing what mental health first aid is, why it matters so much in education, and how schools can build stronger, healthier communities through practical training and support. Let's get started. Welcome, George. How is your week shaping up?
It's gone well so far. We're at the back of, at the end of the second day out of 3. I've worked with all the senior staff, all the primary, and now working with smaller groups. And we've got one more day to go, and I genuinely can't wait to finish the rest of the training with them.
And it's been received fantastically. I mean, I've had feedback ever since you started first thing yesterday morning. The way you're delivering the training, it's engaging. The style that you're delivering it is absolutely fantastic. And I think you're finding our colleagues are responding very positively to the content that you're sharing, which is so important for our schools.
Yeah, I said it in both the senior and the primary. Speaking as an ex-teacher, CPD can be draining. It can be a bit slow. And I like to think, well, how would I want to receive this training? I don't want to be lectured at. I want to have as much involvement as possible. And I want it to be quite quick fire and moving on to the next thing without spending too much time on one little thing. So I'm glad it's been well received. And obviously I genuinely have loved working with every single member so far.
So I think when I first heard the term mental health first aid, I was, what's that? I know what first aid is. I've been doing first aid training since I was about 13 in the Scouts. But mental health first aid, that was a new concept for me. So for the listeners out there for whom mental health first aid is a new concept, could you please just share briefly what we mean by mental health first aid?
On a very practical and just basic level, it's the emotional equivalent of physical first aid intervention. We all have to do our CPR training refreshers, I think it's every 2 years now. What's the CPR equivalent of mental health first aid? It can be the highest risk. How do we support someone who's in so much emotional pain, and we can give them support? But more often than not, mental health first aid is more about just tackling how do we carry out interventions for people who are just having a tough time of it. And that's just the simplified version, because that is what it is. I mean, physical first aid CPR is as straightforward as it should be, because it has to be. And mental health first aid is no different. It's not fancy. We think it is. It's nothing none of us don't actually already know. We just need to reflect on, okay, I actually do know how to do this, and I've got to keep doing it.
How might it be different from general well-being initiatives?
So, funny enough, today with the primary school, the very first answer when I said, what's mental health? A lady said, it's mental health and well-being. They're different, but they kind of have crossover. Mental health is quite an official term, and gosh, I could talk about that for 2-3 hours, but it's the state and the condition we're in psychologically, socially, and emotionally. And our well-being is just our overall sense of contentment, happiness, resilience, how we handle stress. Naturally, and I'm going to be honest here, perhaps kind of outside of a script, as it were, lots of schools say we need to do a mental health initiative and then a well-being one. I very gently say, just try to combine them as much as possible. In my opinion, for most schools, I see wellbeing initiatives being smaller but more consistent things. They're things we just put into our daily practice. Mental health can perhaps be the more official, the policy stuff, the safeguarding steps we take. But again, it's very subjective. What's wellbeing to you is different than what it is to me.
You've started a program here. You're here for 3 days, which is absolutely fantastic. We're delighted that you're here. When you start a program of mental health first aid training with a school like ours, what's the core aim? What's your objective at the start of that training?
Biggest word for me is empowerment. I know it's all these catchwords but it's true. It's empowerment because, again, lots of people hear the term mental health first aid. We bring our own stigma, our own experiences. A male teacher today said, George, half these things we could be saying to someone, you and I never heard growing up. Not because we were mistreated, it just wasn't part of it. I'm a big believer in empowerment. And as you remember today, I said, this should all be stuff we know already and perhaps already do. Leave here with even more confidence of, I know I can do this. I'm doing the right thing. I'm doing more good than harm. And here's just a few more tools to put in my toolbox when I need it. So that's the aim, empowerment.
So think about the training then in terms of outcomes. We love outcomes in education, don't we? So what practical skills do you expect staff to come away with after experiencing your training?
Yeah, so on a very practical level, let's say the mental health first aid, first and foremost, and, obviously be mindful of anyone who might be listening and might be impacted by this, having certainly the first aid steps to do suicide intervention, how to work with those. We spoke yesterday about people who might be going through complex mental health disorders. But then on the flip side, as we discussed yesterday, practical skills in terms of, okay, if a child does come knocking on the door right now and wants to talk to me, what am I going to make sure I'm definitely going to be doing to create a safe environment, an environment where they feel they can disclose, but more importantly, keeps them safe and myself safe, both personally and, let's be honest, professionally as well. As I said to the primary school lot today, not everything I say is your gospel truth. I want you to take some practical skill sets. One of them said today, I've never considered, for example, I'm really glad you told me, as an expression. And she said, it's such a simple thing, but such a powerful thing. I will be frank, beyond the first aid steps, most of the practical elements, the things they take away, is decided by the delegates, because each of them are going to leave with thinking, that resonated with me, that's what I'm taking away. Being blunt, one of the staff members has come up to me and said, George, I'm finding it really hard to say no. Could we talk about that? That's what they took from the training today. And so that's their practical thing. Okay, I need to learn how to say no a bit more.
What are some of the common challenges that staff face when supporting mental health? And how does mental health first aid training address some of these challenges?
So the first one for me would always be time. It's so all well and good saying, give these children as much time and space as possible. And I'm speaking as an ex-teacher here. Is it possible to find that extra time? You're going to your next lesson, or you've got the next batch in, and that's the big factor. Another one could even be, George, I know how to have this conversation, but I don't know where to now connect. I don't know the policies in place. I don't know this, that, and the other. And for some people as well, we spoke about our boundaries being challenged. A lot of people who carry out mental health first aid do get impacted by the training. I hope it's not because of delivery style. It's just, we're personal. It's a human being aspect. That's probably my biggest thing I have to work with staff that attend is I'm worried about being too impacted by having these conversations. Hence why I often say to people, as you've attended mental health first aid, do you remember the psychosis section? That's not within our remit professionally. And some people said today, I don't think I could ever personally help someone like that. It would impact me too much. And my response was, good. So what are you going to do about that? If you know that you're impacted, do you know who to pass this on to? Do you have the confidence to have your boundaries up to say, I'm not the right person to do this for you right now, but let's find someone who is. These, I would say, the challenges most people have about applying the mental health first aid in the schools are easily rectifiable. However, they're easily rectifiable if there is an environment where people can have these conversations about these little obstacles that they have.
So from your experience, George, how does investing in staff mental health affect student well-being and school culture?
It's, again, I'm not going to name names of schools. For some schools, it doesn't impact. And the reason being is they tick the box, done the training, great. See in 3 years' time, George, or next time we have an inspection. Again, we want to hear from the children and the students. And I'm not even trying to sell anything. Often the way that I see is if I do come back and I do a student workshop or things like this, and I worked with a school in Dubai in June, and we were talking about how to listen non-judgmentally and the positive and negative activity. And one of the students, 14-year-old, year 9, which is that lovely, lovely year group, year 9s, and he openly said, that expression, George, that is exactly what so-and-so said to me the other day. And he was a bit confused. And I'm thinking in my head, yeah, because we did that last month as teachers. You don't see astronomical changes. You see it in the small changes, even so much as that child is more willing to have a conversation with you. Or the flip side is, as a teacher, I trusted my gut instinct. Charlie didn't respond the way he usually responds. I'm going to be brave and curious and simply have a chat with him. It tends to be through anecdotes they share back with me. Is that how you see the impact it has on students?
But you say small things, but a student being listened to by a member of staff in a skillful way so that they feel that they are the very least been listened to and understood, that could be huge for a young person.
The result is huge, but the thing itself is fairly small. All I've got to do is sit down and listen to a child or an adult, for 10, 15 minutes sort of idea. It's that whole idea of promoting like culture in a workplace. Great, we're going to do wellbeing weeks all the time sort of thing. Well, for a lot of staff, it's not the wellbeing weeks, it's not the massive things. It could be as much as, can I just have a lunch break? Can I actually, someone cheeky said, maybe a coffee machine, certain staff room. So you're right. It's not insignificant. It's not small in terms of the impact it can have. But if all we've got to do is sometimes just give a bit more time and space to anyone in need, that seems quite small and relatively easy for us to do because, as my mother used to say, you've got 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. We're kind of built for listening.
And the opposite, like nobody listens to me or nobody would listen to me, that can, again, it sounds like a relatively small thing, but the impact on an individual is huge.
Well, speaking as a therapist, very pretentious there, speaking as a therapist, the amount of adults I work with who take forever to come for support, I never ask them, why haven't you come forward before? Partly because it's an accusation. Secondly, we know why. Because for most of them, they've never had the experience of being heard growing up. Us being able to listen and someone being able to be heard and understood, they're skills. And you only learn skills by experiencing them.
Thank you for listening to the Educator's Corner podcast. It's been inspiring to see so many new listeners join us and connect with these conversations. Your support helps us bring on influential guests, dive deeper into critical topics, and amplify the voices shaping education's future. If you haven't already, please hit the follow button. It makes a huge difference to me and the team. Thank you. Okay, so towards the end of the whole staff training yesterday morning, you put up a slide and I think it said, what can employers and employees do to promote better mental health within the school environment? So I'm going to ask a similar question to you now, George. What are the 3 things that schools, and I guess I'm there to talk about employers and staff, do to sustain mental health and wellbeing initiatives after you've gone? What 3 things would you recommend or have you seen make a big difference?
So mine are fairly simplistic and straightforward because the simple things done consistently are the best. Very, very simple one. Very much a quote here: have lunch away from your desk. The equivalent of the breaks, these ideas, very easy for me to say, no longer being in the teaching system. Secondly, switching off emails at night, the boundaries, those professional boundaries, and that's a uniform. That is a team effort. lastly, and I think I was going to say the one, learning about your colleagues and respecting them. I think that's a given. A big one for me is this. I'm encouraging people a lot more to reflect on what they are doing outside of school when it comes to their own well-being, because we're in school for 8-10 hours a day. We have the 2 days off in the weekend. As I often say to my clients, I do 50 minutes with them a week. What do they do for the rest of the week until I see them the week after? I feel, and it's not even controversial to say, and maybe some people are listening thinking, go on, George, keep going. I feel many people in any work environment rely too much on people above them to define and to be dependent on for their own well-being. I hate this expression, but it's quite valid. You can't out-train a bad diet. That the whole idea is that we can do all the things at school, all these great little well-being initiatives, but if you still go home and you still are checking your emails at 9 p.m, or you're not going to bed at a good time, or you're doing this, you're doing that, you bring that into the school environment as well. So it's not just relying on employers. Remember I said yesterday, what are the employees also doing to assist in this?
So those three things, I mean, lunch away from your desk, it's interesting that my PA, Jamie, she's listened to that yesterday, and she's already scheduled in regular slots in my diary for me to have lunch in the staff room. And she said, that'd be good for your well-being, Kai. Switching off emails, yeah, I do find it interesting, and I'd love to hear from listeners out there who haven't yet moved to a sort of 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. email and communication, if you like, curfew, and also at weekends. Because I know Mark Lepard and I from British School Muscat, we were talking about this quite a few months ago on a different podcast episode, and he does that, and we do that at our schools. I know other schools do it, but it seems a simple thing to do. It doesn't cost anything. You don't need any technology to do it. You just need to agree as a staff between 6 p.m. and 6 a.m. We're not going to do any emails. We're not going to do any WhatsApps. There's going to be no communication unless there's an emergency. And if you want to get a load of emails off your desk in the evening because you want to work, no problem. I mean, certainly things like Google, you can do schedule send. I'm sure other programs do that too. So it doesn't stop people working and pushing things along. But I think that helps us create boundaries. I mean, you talked quite a lot about boundaries in the training. And it just seems so simple. But again, the impact that has on all of us right across the school community.
Huge. Absolutely. And being quite cynical, over time, you think, gosh, I'm getting all these emails every evening from parents or teachers. When they realize that you're not going to respond immediately, funny enough, they stop sending a lot of those emails as well anyway. And it's always quite nice. As you said, fairly simple and straightforward, but it has to be a team effort with that one. We all have to be working together.
And then I think, reflecting on what we all do outside, I think that's an important point, and everybody can do that. And I think it's a bit like the scheduling of the lunchtime pieces that I find if I don't schedule the things that I want to do to help my well-being, like walking or swimming, that's our tennis. If I don't schedule into my day, weekly program, they don't happen. So for me, I find scheduling is a really important strategy. Okay, so you're going to be here tomorrow again, and you will have been really energized and inspired, and you made us think a lot over these 3 days. What happens when you go? What can we do? What can other schools do after the initial trainings happened to sustain momentum?
So, look, a cheeky response is, well, book me again. They'll keep going. Of course, book you again. I think it's really important, and it's something I've learned over, companies almost been going for 7 years, and I learned it, from observing my family's company as well. There's no point any company, CPD provider, selling you things just because. I think the most important thing is that you now reflect on the training, you put it into practice, and actually see what from it works and what doesn't work, and have a conversation back to us and say, well, we've noticed that this part of it is working really well, but this part not so much. For me to turn around and say, well, that's great, well then let's direct you this way instead of that way. Because often I ask schools, why do you want to do mental health first aid? That's a big question. I think intent's really important. Just because, how are you going to apply it? Is it needed? So that's what we want to see. We want to hear from the next 3-6 months whether it's worked. We want those little anecdotes. I think the most important thing, though, is naturally, have a formal feedback, with the staff. Come back together and say, did this work? Do we need better guidance on management here? Is it working? Are we fulfilling this? What's been the feedback from those part of the school who aren't the mental health first aiders? But it's very individual. Some schools have contacted since and said, that was great, George. Actually, we want all of our staff to have something of this now. Or some schools say, you know what, that was great, but can you offer something particular around this module from the training, you and I did, for example?
Okay. And so then taking a bit further then, I mean, I talked a few minutes ago about the importance of scheduling for me personally. How can schools integrate mental health first aid practice into their daily routines? Any thoughts on that?
So if I may, if I use an example from equivalent. So, for example, I've got a big passion for eating disorders when it comes to, awareness in schools. And one of the best preventative tools is always going to be education. I'm a big fan of it. I'm an educator myself. The worst way to do it is to have actually literally just scheduled, okay, this is a lesson on eating disorder awareness for the kids. You have it embedded throughout all curriculum, obviously not eating disorders, but things like body image, nutrition, social media literacy, resilience, self-esteem. You're doing it throughout curriculum. So when I was a classics teacher and we're teaching the mythology, and you've got all the statues of beautiful men, all masculine, things like that, that's an opportunity for me to talk about different body types. We're naturally just embedding it, and it just becomes part of the culture. We're not going to put on a hat and say, right, 30 minutes a week, form time is now mental health first aid time. It is simply, well, we spoke about this yesterday in the discussions, you can implement mental health first aid in school just through our use of language. We reflected yesterday on the importance of some words being great and some words actually, are they necessary so much? Can we challenge when people are using certain words? Wellbeing assemblies are amazing. I said we've got Mental Health Week in October. Things like that are great. But again, the best impact and implementation of things is you just do it. It's just naturally blended into the environment. That's the best way.
Yeah, and I think that's like a lot of skills development and training is that it's part of something. It's not standalone. I think it's quite a lot of research that skills are best developed if you do say dig it in context.
Always.
Okay. Looking to the future now, George, how do you see mental health support for schools evolving in the coming years, especially in international contexts?
I can't give a full answer, particularly in international context, but I still think it's relevant because it's funny for how big the world is. We're even more well connected because of things like social media. It's definitely not going to go away because we've all got mental health. I see it adapting. I mean, you're talking about with you and Mark, the relationship with phones. Books like The Anxious Generation have come out and things like that. I see mental health going through more things around seeing mental health through diversity and inequality in that regard. And as I've shared with you in the past, in particular, I think mental health and wellbeing, tackling it through the lens of AI, because AI, ChatGPT, things like this, they're here. I'm going to admit I'm the biggest technophobe in the world. I wouldn't know where to begin, but that's obviously where we're going in all of this. That's where I see mental health going. Being brutally honest, mental health first aid is safeguarding. We all still, no matter how advanced we've got in schools in the last 30 years, we still have to do our foundational safeguarding every year. I don't see it changing that much. I just see there being supplements to the core work we're doing around tackling AI, even to perhaps mental health as a global citizen in these regards. These children moving from Muscat, maybe going to a university in England. How are we doing mental health readiness for university in a multicultural setting? That's how I see it being tackled. But again, do I see it being astronomical changes? I don't. I see it just being little additions to what we're already doing.
So just a few final thoughts as we draw this to a close, because I know you've got a third day of training tomorrow, and the energy that you put into your training, I mean, it's absolutely fantastic, and that we really enjoyed those sessions because of you put so much into it. But thinking about that educator, I mean, you referenced ECTs, early career teachers, once or twice in the training. So an educator who's just starting to learn about mental health, which could be any of us, a BSM, or it could be an ECT, what advice would you give them? What could they prioritize in terms of learning about mental health first aid?
So big things for me, being curious is a big one. Being brave. And the last one I always like empathy. Empathy is a big tool. Big one for me, though, is a bit of an expression I learned when I was retraining as a counsellor. The idea of curiosity and bravery and things like this, absolutely. A big one for me was try to be comfortable in the uncomfortable. There are some topics when I attend training myself where I'm like, I don't like that. I don't agree with that. I've had my own experiences that go against that. But being comfortable in the uncomfortable, what do we often say to the children? You can't learn without getting things wrong. You can't, sort of idea. You've got to break down your muscles to build up the muscles idea. That's my big thing with people. I want them to be open-minded, curious, brave, but also give it a go at being comfortable in the uncomfortable. You can always leave. You can always leave sections, but actually it's good for us to hear things that might be a bit uncomfortable to further cement. That's not the pathway I actually want to go down. That doesn't meet my limits of proficiency. That's what I'd advise them.
Okay, that sounds easy.
Yeah.
Trying to be comfortable with the uncomfortable. Have you got any tips on how to do that?
Unfortunately, you don't know what's uncomfortable for you until you're put in it. And that's the big one. The reason why I felt I could be comfortable in the uncomfortable was because I had that support network around me. I was studying with others. This is what I really like. If you don't mind, Kai, if I'm saying this, I always encourage schools. We can do an open course and invite other schools. However, I like to think they give you really good price packages so you can get this in-house. So you're doing it as a community. Because if one person is asking the question, I'm not quite sure on this, George, 3 or 4 others are thinking the same thing. The other thing is that having a good support network for when it does impact us. As a counsellor, I have supervision. You've got a great coaching environment here. You've got the line management. You've got people saying, I've got a meeting with them next week. That is the equivalent of a safety net, isn't it? The kids who become most successful in class get the best results over time. Hardworking, always diligent, resilient. Most of them are resilient because deep down they realise if I get things wrong, my teacher is going to back me and to help me. And this is no different. If people want to feel that they can be uncomfortable and dig in and explore these things, almost on a subconscious level, they need to feel that they would be supported. And that is how we encourage it.
That's really helpful to hear that. Like, there's no magic thing there. But you say it's partly about creating that culture of safety, but maybe talking to colleagues about it, say, well, when that happened, I was feeling really uneasy, and being conscious of the feelings that are going through your body and what you're thinking. And yeah, I felt that, and sort of normalizing it, and it's okay.
Yeah. Do you remember that artwork I showed with psychosis? And I said to you all, how would it feel to be the initial first aider for this? And a few people hesitate, and one of you said, I'd be really scared. And then 4 or 5 of you automatically said, yeah, I'd be scared. And it's not like, oh, you're all ironically scared of sharing an answer. It's just like, we're all it's good for us to be open and honest. And, oh, thank goodness I'm scared because I shared it with you. I was petrified. Yeah. I was worried. I was comfortable in the uncomfortable. Why? Because I knew I had my supervisor there. But it's about being, you mentioned when authentic. We can't expect others to be uncomfortable if we're not doing it ourselves.
Yeah. And like you say, doing that as a team, doing that with colleagues, and that's why the training as a school is great, because you give us a shared language, you give us a shared experience, and then we can talk about that together. So that's fantastic. Okay. Is there anything else, George, that you would like to share with our listeners about supporting mental health and wellbeing, whether for staff or students, before we go today?
Yeah, that's a 30-second sales pitch. No, I'll just say this. If any school is interested, and I know this sounds a bit odd, it might sound a bit all high and mighty, there's no harm just reaching out to us. It might well be that you share with us, these things that we want, and we can't deliver that. We can't offer it. We're going to connect you with the ones who can. The best way, how to encourage the start, just have a dialogue first and foremost. I always encourage schools, though. They say, we're in a panic. We've got to do this. We've got to do that. And I love this expression. if you want to move the mountain, start with the first pebble. Have a chat with us. That's the first pebble. We can hear what's going on for you, and then we can share ideas and experiences and connect you with whatever needs to be done. But how you're going to tackle this, you've got to start having the conversation first, else how can you even start to implement it?
And where can listeners find out more about you, George, and Mind Your Health Limited?
So we have our website, mindyourhealthlimited.com. As you know, Kai, I think it's almost better. You can have our email from there and our number. It sounds a bit odd. The best way to connect with us is always LinkedIn. I'm a glut for LinkedIn. I talk about hate social media, Instagram and that, but LinkedIn's just phenomenal. We're pretty quick with response. We're a good old within 24 hours, but not between 6 p.m. and 6 a.m. Kai, because that's good boundaries for emails. But the website's great, but find us at LinkedIn, Mind Your Health Limited, or my own personal LinkedIn, which is George Peterkin.
George, thank you so much for this afternoon. Thank you also for your insights here at British School Muscat and on this podcast. And thank you for the enthusiasm and energy and expertise which you bring to this work. And I think maybe what's also really engaged our staff here at BSM is the style. Very disarming. It's quite a lot of content you've worked through with us over these few days, but the way you do it is absolutely delightful, and you're dealing with some pretty difficult stuff. So if your school wants to work with George and his team and help move forward mental health first aid at your school, you know who to speak to.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks, George. Take care. You've been listening to the Educator's Corner podcast with me, Kai Basher. This show is created by British School Muscat and British School Salalah, with post-production by Communicating for Impact. For updates and insights, remember, you can subscribe to my newsletter, Kai Pod News. Simply follow the link in the show notes to sign up. Until next time, stay curious.